Welcome to our segment where we talk about the Bible and science. Please remember that science points us to God because God is the creator of the universe, and we see His fingerprints throughout all of creation. And so I enjoy watching the Jurassic Park movies just like everyone else. However, I do believe they put a lot of propaganda out there that's not completely true about dinosaurs. And one of the things that they portray in the Jurassic Park movies is that basically most dinosaurs were aggressive meat eaters. And that's not true. And so I want you to understand that all because a dinosaur has sharp teeth does not tell us how that dinosaur behaved or what they necessarily ate. It just means the dinosaur had sharp teeth. By studying fossil dinosaur dung, though, we have been able to determine the diet of some dinosaurs, but not most dinosaurs. And I want you to realize before Adam and Eve sinned, they were vegetarians, as were all the other animals. Genesis 1:29 and 30 reads, "Then God said, Look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant throughout the earth, and all the fruit trees for your food, and I've given every green plant as food for who? All the wild animals, the birds in the sky, and the small animals that scurry along the ground. Everything that has life." And that is what happened. And so everything, all animals and people before the fall were vegetarians. That even means that the T-Rex was a vegetarian before sin entered into the world. Now, some people say, well, that can't be true. Look at the size of the teeth on the T-Rex. Well, just because an animal has big sharp teeth does not mean it eats meat. It just means it has big sharp teeth. Many animals today have sharp teeth, and they are vegetarians. I've actually had the privilege of feeding a panda bear in China, and they have incredibly sharp teeth, but they eat bamboo and not meat. Now, an evolutionist will come along and say things like the panda must have once ate meat and has evolved into a bamboo eater. That's pure speculation. There's nothing for them to define that theory or to come up with that theory except they have sharp teeth. Different bats have very sharp teeth, and they eat fruit, insects. Some will eat small animals, but their teeth do not indicate what they eat. Bears have teeth that have carnivore features, and many, if not most, bears are mainly vegetarian. So everything in the Garden of Eden got along with each other, but sin changed everything. That's why Paul describes this present creation as groaning in Romans 8:22 because of the curse that we find in Genesis. Now, before sin entered into the world, the Garden of Eden was a different place than what we see today. It's even hard to imagine what it must have been like as God was keeping this world in a perfect state, and everything got along with each other. There was no death, there was no decay, everything was getting along. And it's hard to kind of imagine that. However, we do get a small glimpse from Scripture of what it means when God keeps things in a perfect state. And here's what that looks like. And in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 4 reads, "For all these 40 years your clothes didn't wear out, and your feet didn't blister or swell." And this is talking about when the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. Their clothes didn't wear out, their shoes didn't wear out, and their feet didn't even swell with all that walking for 40 years because God was taking care of them. And so it's important for us to understand that when God is in control of things, wearing out or being hurt in any way is not even an option. And so that's what it was like in the Garden of Eden before the fall. Now, when God brings in the new heaven and earth that we read about in Revelation, the world will return to that pre-existing state before sin. Now, one of the things we don't really understand is how fangs and claws came about. It is possible that fangs and claws were always there, or there may have been a recessive feature that only became dominant due to the selection process later after the curse of sin. Or did God, just in His foreknowledge, know what was going to happen eventually in the garden with Adam and Eve, with them sinning, so He already had them prepared to change their diet? We don't know that, and we're probably never going to know that until we can ask God Himself when we get to heaven. So in the beginning, God gave dominion to man over all the animals. Then, however, the flood even changed the behavior of animals. This is fascinating too. In the Garden of Eden, it seems like that everybody got along. Adam and Eve got along with all the animals. But read this in Genesis 9:2. It says, all the animals of the earth, all the birds of the sky, all the small animals that scurry along the ground, and all the fish in the sea will look on you with fear and terror. I have placed them in your power. So what we see here is that God gave man dominion over the animals, yet after the fall, they had fear and terror when the animals looked upon man. Instead of coming to man, they ran away from man. And so we see that after the flood. And so now animals fear mankind. It would make it more challenging to carry out that dominion mandate that God gave humanity in Genesis 1:28, where it says that God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it, reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. So the Bible tells us that sin changed animals in what they ate. So the flood changed animals that they now fear humankind. So it is not always easy to know everything about dinosaurs by just looking at their teeth or even studying the fossil record. Now, one last thing I want to jump in here on this Bible and science segment. Fossils, it's fascinating that when you look at how fossils came about, it's interesting why it fits so well with the Bible. So why do fossils fit well with the Bible? Well, when an animal dies, it usually gets eaten and decays very slowly, and there's nothing left. What most people don't think about when it comes to the fossil record is that that animal must die and be buried in a unique condition that preserves the animal and replaces it with minerals, and it has to do it very quickly. Evolutionists used to claim that fossils originated slowly over time as the animal was covered with sediment. However, they now acknowledge that the fossil record must involve a catastrophic process that allowed the animal to be preserved. These organisms had to die and be buried quickly to form billions of fossils that we find across the globe. And that is precisely what we get when we look at the Bible. The Bible tells us that God sent a global flood, destroying everything under heaven. God commanded Noah to build a massive boat in which he and his family and representatives of every kind of land-dwelling and air-breathing animal that God chose Himself and brought to Noah to be placed on that massive ship. And so I hope you realize that when we look at the Bible, we understand how fossils could be made and how animals died quickly and how they were preserved quickly, and the fossil record fits with the biblical story. I hope you've enjoyed this week's segment of Bible and Science. Please remember that we Christians are never afraid of science. We embrace real science because God is our Creator and there are no surprises to Him.